think, Marge. All I need is a title.
Between the years of 1368 and 1644, the nation of China was ruled by the Ming Dynasty, who had thrown off the Mongolians, who had basically controlled the former Yuan dynasty. The first Ming emperor, Hongwu, ruled from 1368 to 1398 and concentrated on building up Chinese society and consolidating the power of the throne. Notably for the future of the country, Hongwu also started the work of building the shipyards that would soon become of paramount importance to the Ming. Despite the attempts of the emperor to centralize power, succession to the throne fell into contention with an uprising that ended when Yang Li ascended to power in 1402. He moved the capital of the country from Nanjing in the south to Beijing in the north. He also started the construction of the Forbidden City and repaired the Grand Canal. The government also implemented oversight over official appointments. One such appointment was the eunuch Zheng He, who became the admiral of the Imperial Navy. With imperial support, Zheng built the Chinese Navy into the largest of the world at that time. From 1402 to 1419, 7 voyages of this Chinese fleet spread Chinese economic ties from the Great Ming Empire to lands as far away as the Middle East and the east coast of Africa. The nation went through a series of issues, from corruption within the government to various invasions and revolts. This sapped the energy of the government, and the Chinese exploration stopped. Perhaps the only reason the Great Ming Empire lasted as long as it did was because the government and the naval fleet established a series of tributary states that relied on Ming for help in their defense. Andrew Lambert, a professor of naval history at King's College in London, described the relationship as a mafia-like relationship, where the tribute state paid the Ming for protection.
The wonderful stuff that the Chinese brought to trade included porcelain and silk. But in exchange, they demanded a high, symbolic price.
It's a mafia-like operation. I'll look after you if you treat me nicely. The emperor is the godfather of Asia. He's in control of everything, and he likes to remind people of this quite forcefully now and again, and he gets paid off in whatever it is he likes to be paid in. So it's that kind of relationship. It's an enforcing. It's subtle, but it's quite clear. If you mess with the Chinese emperor, he can take you down.
This additional income from the tributary states probably offset the loss of income from people avoiding taxes and probably kept the regime in power for quite a bit longer than it would have been. In our timeline, the doctrines put down by the Emperor Hongwu apparently did not stick for too long past his death. The throne was contested between 1398 and 1402 before the Emperor Yang Li took power. During Yang Li's reign, he expanded Chinese influence greatly through the use of the naval fleet. However, if the various eunuchs and appointees had taken the Huang Ming Zushun doctrines more to heart, this may have led to better government management of the taxation process and curbing piracy along the coast. It also may have allowed the government to continue sponsoring the naval fleet as it continued its explorations. It is important to note at this point that the voyages of the treasure fleets did not simply establish trade relations between China and the lands vastly far away from the throne of the Ming Dynasty. Zheng He was given imperial authority. In other words, he basically acted as the emperor in all affairs while on his voyages. He therefore settled the issue of piracy in the South China Sea by engaging the pirates, many of whom ended up being executed in Beijing. He established a tributary state in Malacca and pacified the region of Sumatra. He established peaceful relations with cultures in Sri Lanka and along the Swahili coast of Africa. Zheng He was under orders from the imperial government to explore areas of interest to China, or those areas willing and able to pay the tribute to the Ming throne. Andrew Lambert states that exploring just to do it was not in those orders, and Zheng He would have been executed had he gone off and discovered America.
It has been asserted by some popular writers that Zheng He or other Chinese enterprises might have reached Canada, North America, South America, Australia, wherever. There's no evidence for this. There's no reason to suppose that they did. Had they done so, Zheng He's own hagiographers would have recorded the fact.
What's been written down is probably only 20% or 50% of what happened. So we don't really know what actually happened. I think Zheng He could kind of went to some places never been recorded. But for places like Europe or America, that significant discovery, it's not in any of the records.
So why, with the world at their feet, did these explorers from the East not go further? Could they have mapped the modern world? It seems they had the capability, but not the desire.
Zheng He was sent off to visit all of the world that the Chinese knew about and cared about. That's not all of the world, but certainly all of the world that mattered. All the world that was close enough to have any impact on China, or indeed close enough to be impressed by China and pay tribute. Columbus' 3 scrappy little vessels that the King of Spain couldn't care less about. It was like buying a lottery ticket. If it came off, great. If you lost them, doesn't matter. Zheng He isn't Columbus. He's not able to make it up as he goes along. He's following orders. If he'd gone off and found America, they'd have decapitated him.
However, it would not have taken much more effort than was already being expended to contact perhaps the Mamluks in Egypt, the natives in Madagascar, or explore down through Indonesia, certainly exploring the Philippines, and perhaps exploring the areas of northern and western Australia. Unfortunately, that's possibly as far as they might have gotten. While some people might be inclined to believe that the Chinese at this time could have discovered or colonized America, they perhaps don't remember the limiting parameters of the imperial government's orders to Zheng He to explore areas of interest to China. This may have been an oversight on the part of the Chinese, but to them, focusing south and west from Ming China simply seemed to be the sensible thing to do. And while the Indian Ocean is certainly quite wide and difficult by the standards of 15th century sailing, the Pacific Ocean is even more so. Pretty much the only clue any ship would have had that America even exists would have been if they sailed northward through the region of Vladivostok and eastern Siberia, an area that is not too hospitable now, much less in the 15th century. Plus, there would not have been anything of much interest to Ming China up in that direction except the Mongols, who the Ming were busy fortifying the Great Wall against. Even if the Chinese found America, they were not really the colonizing kind of people, which probably led to other countries coming to them, which is what they wanted in various degrees. The largest Chinese colony from the Ming era seemed to be accidental when some sailors from the exploration fleets jumped ship in Malacca and established a Chinese community there that still exists today. Given all of this, in our alternate timeline, the Chinese were able to expand and explore a bit further than they actually did in reality. They trade actively with peoples as far away as Madagascar and the Swahili coast, to Egypt and the Mamluks, to Persia and Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia and Vietnam, the Philippines, Indonesia, and parts of Australia, as well as Korea and Japan. They would have been opposed by the Mongols and the Oirat, but what really took down the Great Ming Empire, which in this alternate timeline took longer to collapse the empire, allowing it to explore a bit further than it actually did. Would the explorations of the Ming Dynasty continued, and would their vast fleet have allowed the Ming to stand up to the global superpowers of the day? The problem with saying yes to this is that only one emperor supported the exploration voyages after the death of the Emperor Yongle. This emperor sponsored the final 7th voyage, and the Admiral Zheng He died while on that voyage. After that, there was no support within the imperial court, and in fact, some members of the court burned the notes taken by Zheng He during the voyages in an attempt to squelch any further interest in such adventures. If China had established colonies, these would be small outposts that would compete with the locals for land and resources, and they would require some expenditure of money and resources for their defense. This was not what the Ming were doing with their explorations. They used the voyages of their navy to bring money and exotic things to the imperial court. They did not exert energy and resources on supporting overseas colonies. Under this approach, the Ming probably would not have established a colony on the western coast of America, even if they found themselves there somehow. Unfortunately, the rules of the alternate history series prevent us from speculating on what would have happened had the Emperor Yongle or the Admiral Zheng He had lived longer. They died when they did of natural causes, and the support of the exploration fleets died with them.